Bada boom. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. As always, I am your host, Duck, and today is episode 15. We had a bit of a hiccup over the month. I had a workshop I did out in Ohio that kind of set me back. And then the last episode that we recorded, the audio failed to record. So that's why nothing got
Thank
uploaded
goodness.
to.
And then for a few seconds there, thank goodness.
Yeah, well, but anyway, it looks like my audio is working fine. It looks like the camera's working fine. I got the studio set up, but I'm going to turn it over to you guys, Brian and Alan, because Brian, you had a really good question in regards to lens choice and for bird photography. Because those of you who might be watching this recording later, Alan does some phenomenal work photographing eagles. They're up in your area, correct?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
the eagles that I've shot this year are up here in Enfield. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you have easy access to them, which is great. But, just when you're photographing wildlife, it doesn't matter what you're photographing, there's an element of luck and a bigger element, correct me if I'm wrong, of patience.
Definitely. Well, definitely. I mean, I can go to the wildlife preserve up in or just across the state line, and I'll be there for hours just leaning up against my car.
Yeah.
And if what I consider a slow day is I don't I the eagles aren't flying, I'll decide to take I'll give myself a challenge. I say, okay, all I see is a bunch of um, tree swallows flying around all over the place.
Oh, right.
They are moving like crazy. Sometimes they sit on couple of branches, but most of the time they're zipping across the water, picking up the mosquitoes or whatever they're eating that's flying around.
Yeah.
So I give myself a challenge. Okay, can I this afternoon? Can I get a good shot? All I need is one good shot of those tree swallows. Took me 300-400 shots to do it, but I got
Oh,
it.
no, but you know what? Uh, There's nothing more frustrating, at least for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nothing more frustrating to have the desire to take your camera out and you want to come home with something. You don't want your day to part
Oh yeah,
part of it is like, yeah, I love being out with my camera, being outdoors. It gets me outside, it gets me, in the fresh air, gets me exercising. I enjoy that. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to come home with something that says it was worth the time and effort to go out there you
for
know
I want to put something that's my cover shot on Facebook that I shot that day.
oh, okay, there's
I
a
can,
there's a
okay,
goal.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's always going to be something. It might not be the cover shot. I mean, I might on a foggy morning go up to any one of the two or three ponds that lakes, that water sources that I go to. I want to see a bird coming through that mist.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
whether it's a cormorant, whether it's a great blue heron, whether it's a Canada goose, uh, anything coming towards me out of the mist,
Nice.
type of a thing, or a big swan. Got a couple of swans coming at me out of the mist. Um, but like everything else, it's one of the things you have to know your camera.
Yeah.
Gotta know your camera inside and out, and you have to check your settings frequently. I often get so excited that I'm taking all these bunches of pictures that I come back and I goof something up.
Mm-hmm.
Whether my finger my I have index finger is forward button is the shutter, back button is the back button focus. Definitely use
Right.
back button focus with this, um, which takes a lot of getting used to too.
Yeah.
But I use back button because shooting an eagle, shooting a cormorant, shooting a great blue heron flying over a pond, I'm going to run across a tree,
Yeah.
or something's going to pop up that automatic focus is going to go for. I don't want it to do that. So I'm using back button focus. But you have to know your camera
Yes. Yeah.
and your equipment. Whether I'm shooting all on manual, I'm not shooting automatic. I'm shooting all on manual.
Yeah.
Shutter
You need
speed
that
locked
muscle
in.
memory.
Yeah, the shutter speed's locked in, for birds in flight, not for birds sitting down.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm running auto ISO, and my f-stop is wide open. Whatever lens I have is wide open.
Hmm.
Um, but I want to stop that action, and if I come back home, we've got denoise in Lightroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we've got. I mean, I want to get the shot.
Yeah.
I want to get that particular shot. I do not care about my ISO when
Hmm.
I'm shooting, because lots of times it's going from a shady to sunlight to shade again. Okay, and someplace in between. Um, they never know when the flap of those wings is just going to be just right, whether it's going to be in sunlight or whether it's
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
in shadow
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, to revisit what Brian said before we started the recording, and actually, speaking of which,
Recording in progress.
I should gonna double my chances here and have Zoom recorded as well. It's, just having too many issues with OBS. But anyway, just to reiterate what Brian said is he asked a question in regards to lens choice because he wants to give it a try. And you know, you made some recommendations. Obviously, a long lens is appropriate for this, but there's more to it than that. Uh, and like you said, knowing your camera settings and how to follow the action and prep for the action. But also, I find that the resolution of the camera plays an important part because the higher the resolution, the more you can crop in and be able
yes,
to get in closer to a subject that by default is at a distance.
well, and that's one of, yes, and that's hard, because I mean I would much rather use my A9 has a faster focusing for for birds. It has a faster focusing rate. Okay, but it's 24 megapixels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and then I've got the A7R4, which is 61 megapixels, but it's all not that great on
Right.
the autofocusing of flying objects. So I have to think twice which one I want to take. Okay, if I'm going to take eagles, I have my 600 millimeter with the 1.4 teleconverter on at f9 is 840 millimeters.
Right.
I'm still not that close. Okay, I still going to have to crop the things that you've seen on Facebook. It's cropped.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really.
Yeah,
But
you know,
and I mean, and this is where we get into Topaz. Okay.
yes.
I mean, I do use Topaz denoise. I use Topaz Photo AI, as well as Photos AI Sharpen, and occasionally Gigabyte AI.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to fill in some of the blanks, or to, I mean, it depends on what the wildlife is doing, is whether it's a wide shot is appropriate
Right.
or whether you're going for a closer shot. Okay, sometimes you want to see what else is going on, and you don't need a tight shot of that eagle sitting in a tree. Sometimes you want the three eagles sitting in a tree.
Right.
Okay, or just something. I mean, a whole tree full of tree swallows. Okay, on one tree, every branch full of
Oh
three or
yeah,
four
yeah,
tree
yeah,
swallows. The
yeah,
whole just sitting there. Well, you got to take it quick because that's not going to
yeah,
that's not going to be there that long. But here again, that's the wider shot than going in for a tight shot of one of them.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, 300 millimeters are fine depending on where the area is that you're at.
yeah,
What type of thing? I mean, you take pictures. I take pictures outside my window with a 200.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's funny every time the topic of eagles and camera lenses comes up, I am taken back to my very first meetup that I did way, I don't know, it's got to be 10 years now. Meetup.com. I had decided to start my own group on Meetup, and I figure, what would be cooler than photographing eagles? All right. So I found this group out of, I think, Clinton or something or other. This guy who runs these excursions and guaranteed to spot eagles. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'll hop in on his group and we'll photograph. And I had my Canon 40D with my 7300 lens, the kit lens. All right. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's going to be great. Set it up. We had like 6 people come out. And I had given my wife my little point and shoot that she had bought me as an introduction into digital. That once I upgraded, she kind of took that over, and it was just a little 6 megapixel. My 40D was 12 megapixel. So we show up, and like we're all excited, and we're over by the ferry landing across from Gillette Castle. Okay, and he's pointing out, oh, they'll appear over here. Sometimes you can see them over here or other, right? And everybody's there with these huge binoculars. And here I am with my little camera, and my wife with his little camera, and everybody else with their little cameras. And the guy comes up to us and to introduce himself, and I'm like, yeah, we're with a photo group, and would love to get some pictures of the eagles. And he looks at all our cameras and says no. He just kind of he held back from laughing out loud. That was for sure. And yeah, he goes, no, you're not going to get it with that. And he was right, because what he was doing is he was pointing out the eagles that were like 2 miles away. And everybody is like, oh, yeah, based on the tail feathers, that's a juvenile male. And they're saying all this stuff. And like, yeah, I point my camera, it's this tiny little speck, you know it was definitely a very, very embarrassing life lesson, and here I thought I did my due diligence in scoping it out and guaranteed to find eagles to photograph. Oh yeah, well,
wildlife in general, you try to not you tried to not invade the habitat of the
yeah,
wildlife. And the most part, the only way of doing that is with the longer lens.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, I mean whether it's on that cruise down the Connecticut River and he's pointing out the different nests and the osprey nest on the sound buoy might be the closest you can get,
Yeah, yeah,
type of a thing. Um, but with the longer lenses are a definite plus for the pictures like I take.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I don't know about in your area, but I know down in this area in Milford, um, the Audubon Society was aware that there was an eagle's nest kind of in the middle of this residential area in Milford. And they were very protective about disclosing the location, you know. Um,
yeah, I mean we try not to disclose the locations too, but I mean it's a these eagles are in public property.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's not like, I mean, the eagles, one of the eagles' nest up here is, yeah, okay, fine, it's on private property, but it's right next to a local pond
right.
with a gazebo and with a parking area and where other people fish and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Same thing in Glastonbury.
Well, I can understand, not letting the information out too much in order to protect the area, to a certain extent. But yeah, you're right. It was kind of like an open secret.
Yeah, yeah,
Those who were interested, it's easy to find out the locations, but the general public, they don't need to know. So it wasn't openly, broadcast that, hey, look, if you go to this street and you park right here and you walk into the woods, you're going to see a nest. They don't want people,
I mean, here
you
again,
know?
that's, I mean, it's 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 enough of an issue where a lot of these places to take pictures are also hiking trails with or dog walks.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the dogs are going to scare the wildlife.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just have to be aware that there's a dog in the area and it might scare up the wildlife.
Right. Right.
Okay, I mean here again, everybody has to
Yeah.
commingle or
Yeah.
habitat.
But, but getting back to Brian's thing with, excuse me, wanting to photograph wildlife. Yeah, we look at your beautiful photos of these eagles, and it's just they're amazing to look at because one, it's an amazing subject, but you have the eye to catch them in these phenomenal poses, you know, and then obviously you freely share them on your social media, so it becomes an inspiration for those of us who, you know, would like to take pictures like that, but really don't know how, so it's like, maybe I should try what he's doing.
You also have to be patient
Oh
because
yeah, absolutely.
you're dealing with
But
nature.
I think what
Okay,
happens I think what happens is that, people think about wildlife photography as being these exotic photos. Go to the zoo and take pictures of the tigers, and hang out by the pond and try to get pictures of the eagle, or go down by the shore or get the osprey images. But one of the most successful and most fun wildlife outings I ever did was going into the woods. Well, no, it was like an overgrown field around a pond, and then behind that it went into the woods, and it was just an excursion to photograph what we could find. And oh my friggin' god, it was a gold mine. As long as you open your eyes and look into the miniverse, if you want to call it that, because photographing eagles, yeah, you're looking at the broad landscape and you're looking up into the sky and you're looking at things like that. But if you bring your vision in a little bit to just your immediate surroundings, you know, all the songbirds that like to hang out in the lower branches of trees, in the interior of bushes. Okay, it was just amazing. Bluebirds, cardinals, you know, sparrows galore.
Hart,
You know.
Hartnett State Park and down in Waterford is fantastic
Hmm.
for that type of environment.
Yeah,
And
we
it just
were.
has walk.
Yeah, we
But
were at Kellogg's in Derby,
okay,
and so Kellogg's is kind of like a reserve, a wildlife reserve. Okay, and there's some hiking trails, but right across the street from the main building is a plot of land with a little lake, and it's usually overgrown, and they'll you know mow it for hay once or twice a year, but most of the time, you know, you're walking around in grass up to your chin, you know, and if you venture just a little bit off the beaten path and start looking in amongst all that grass, the amount of life that you can spot, grasshoppers, caterpillars, butterflies, skippers, moths, you know, like I mentioned, all the songbirds, squirrels, chipmunks, you know,
yeah,
dragonflies. Yeah,
dragonflies.
it's
I mean,
just,
they're fantastic to take pictures of.
yeah, you will not, you will not walk home disappointed, you know.
Right,
Uh,
as long as you don't go out for a particular
right.
reason.
Yeah.
Okay,
And yeah, like you
you
said
want
at
to
the very
enjoyable as
beginning,
long
if
as you don't have to go out for a particular reason. You're
yep,
going out to see wildlife, no matter what what you're going to come back with and what you come across. You're not going to only take a picture of pick up your camera if you see that eagle.
yeah, yeah.
You're going to go out and
Let
take pictures of nature.
yeah. Let me tell you,
Yep.
for about a half an hour, I was mesmerized by this little inchworm, little caterpillar, going out along the length of a grass, all right, climbing upwards. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, he's gonna get to the end, and there's no place for him to go. Was I ever so wrong? How they do this blows my mind. He came out on one of the leaves, and he get all the way to the end, and as he's crawling out, that stalk is doing this. All right, and he literally walked off that onto the next plant over, and it went back up, and he was on the next friggin' branch. How you know, it just, I was mesmerized, and I caught that, you know. I'll have to dig it up one of these days, but I caught that. It was like amazing, you know.
And then
um
you can watch that one single bumblebee for 5-10 minutes. One bumblebee, he'll get so covered in pollen that you don't know how he's able to fly.
oh, I know, yeah.
That type of thing. Or yeah, that you have. Oh yeah, all kinds of different insects that are quite amazing when you go take pictures of them.
Yeah, yeah. I think the most frustrating part of any kind of wildlife photography is the amount of butt photos you get. It seems every time you aim the camera, they turn their butt towards you.
It's amazing how the birds know you're there because they will turn their butt to you.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I've numerous eagles are straight on, but then all of a sudden they'll flip over, and that's
Yeah,
all we see
yeah,
is the backside of them.
yeah. Oh my God,
So,
it's hilarious. So
So when you were talking, I guess I referenced the eagles because I do want to go out and mainly birds. When you're talking about, a lot of what I'm looking at is songbirds and things around, because that I live around where you do, Duck, and I walk the woods, or when I do
mhm.
get out, that's, things that are up in the trees, I'd like to be able to get a shot of it. But, Alan said something earlier about a bunch of settings and he mentioned back something,
Back button
that
focus.
back button
Yeah, that's
focus.
something that I have on all my cameras. Ugh.
Okay. Because, it does take patience, but I guess when I go out in the woods, my main purpose is maybe I'll find something good to shoot, but mainly I'm out there to be out there. So,
Yeah,
but then, and you know how it is when you're walking around, birds don't give you a lot of chance for setup. You gotta boom. But
yeah,
and I
yeah,
have noticed, well, you saw my critters book. I've been pretty lucky with some of and all those pictures they're like street photography. They just happened, and I was there in the right place
yeah.
at the
Oh
right
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, that's just
so
it. You have to be open to the experience,
right.
and you have to be like Alan said. You have to be quick
Yeah.
because you take a shot, and then the next second, poof, that shot's
Yeah.
gone. You know.
and know your one of the other things is know your area. Don't be afraid to go back to the same area every week, every couple of days. You get to know what the landscape is like.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you go there and wait a minute, that's different. That's a bird sitting on that branch that's
Yeah.
not normally there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That type of thing. So I mean, a lot of people just say, "Oh, I was there last week. I'm not going." Yeah, I'm going somewhere else. But yeah, don't be afraid to go back to the same place, couple
Mhm.
whatever.
Back in the day when photography forums were very popular, I belonged to a couple of them. And there was this one photographer that uh, always posted on a very consistent regularity these amazing photos of different types of songbirds. And one day somebody asked, how are you getting these friggin' phenomenal images? I mean, in your face, full frame images of birds. And he disclosed his secret. He was shooting through his front bay window. What he did is he created a habitat for the birds directly in front of his bay window.
And that's what
His
we have. That's what we have here. That's what I have here.
Yeah,
Um,
and
for insects and birds and so forth.
mhm,
Yeah, and it's great. You shoot your blind. Your house is your blind.
that's it. Exactly. That's exactly what he did. He would close his curtains and he would shoot through the curtains, or he would have the lights off, and if he's back enough away from the glass on a day when there's no reflection off the glass, he can shoot all day long, and the birds don't care. But the thing is, because he curated the environment, he was able to create these. I guess the best way to describe it is these tableaus that were specifically designed to make beautiful pictures. All right. He put the branches in a specific spot. He was careful about his background, and he made these little pockets, these little I guess pockets, you can best description, that he could preload with food. All right, usually seed that was out of sight from the camera angle. But would be there to lure the birds in. So, he'd get a bird to come in to, feed on some seed, and he's clicking away. They'd pick one up, they'd be looking around, that's when he takes the picture, then they pick up another seed, and, they're eating. He's getting all these great shots.
And with remote controls these days, you can set up a camera pre-focused on a particular spot.
Yes.
And wait for something to sit there, and then take it from your house, from out of sight.
Yep.
Type of thing as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because some of these birds are I don't know if the right term is environmentally aware.
Oh yes.
They know what's going on. If you move, they go.
Yeah.
If you move to the slightest, they go. Okay. Other birds will just stick around and okay, fine. Okay, but there are certain birds, some birds that the slightest movement, they're out of there.
Right.
But yeah, with the remote control now, and you've also seen some guys actually have set up a studio outside for, let's say, with a white backdrop and a couple of flash units, a couple of strobes, and the remote operated camera for when that one bird sits on that tree, pop the flash off, and it's got a shot.
Yeah.
So there's tons of things you can do.
Yeah.
To do.
Yeah, and actually that brings up another point, is that, like you said, Brian, there's a couple trails in your area that you like to go hiking into. And like Alan said, when you visit a place a couple of times, you start learning who the residents are on these trails. And the nice thing is, like Alan said, you just revisit it, a couple of times. And maybe one day you decide, well, you know what, I'm going to bring my macro lens and a flash and just concentrate on taking macro images of insects, Another day you said, you know what, I'm going to throw on my long lens and I'm going to see if I can capture birds, And I find that for either case, walking slow and walking deliberately helps out a lot, because oftentimes you will hear them before you ever see them. And I'm sure Alan will agree with that. So when you hear them, it's...
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And the other thing is, I mean, if you hear them, watch for them to move, just like they watch for you to move. I mean,
yep.
Sometimes I can hear a bird and I know where it's in a general vicinity, but I can't see it. So I am watching for it to flip around on the tree branch or that type of thing.
Yeah.
Movement is your best friend as well as
Yeah. And so right across the river is a park that's mental block on the name of the park. O'Reilly? No. Anyway, it's a park in Derby, right where the Housatonic and the Naugatuck River, diverge. It's right there. And there's a pond. Actually, there's like two ponds that are kind of connected.
I think they call that Sullivan's.
And Sullivan, O'Sullivan's.
We've been there.
Park. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So they got a great white heron. They have a night heron. There's turtles galore, and they're skittish as hell. All right. There's geese galore, throughout any given time. But there's also all kinds of songbirds. And when I go there, I'll usually, when I remember, I have a bottle of bird seed. And what I'll do is I'll load up the tops of the fence post with bird
Ah,
feed, okay, and then kind of hide myself in the bushes across the path from there. And it's a waiting game because it's on a path. They're going to be a little bit more skittish, and depending on what kind of walking traffic. But I'll wait. Sometimes it'll be a squirrel. Sometimes it'll be a robin or a bluebird or a sparrow or something, and I'll take photos at that point. You know, so I have no qualms about baiting. For
right.
birds. You know, some people think that's
Yeah, have fun.
cheating. But no, I'm gonna up my chances. Damn it, I'm not gonna be, sitting out there
I
five
mean,
hours.
I mean, I take pictures of of the feeders right in front of my house, whether it be it a suet cake or
Hmm.
a seed feeder what or Oreos pecking away at an orange on an Oreo feeder. So yeah, so no, but I also don't throw raw meat for the eagles either.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's when you start getting yourself into trouble.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
really start
Yeah.
baiting wildlife like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that brings up a point. Eagles are a protected species. So you have to be careful, you know, around them and what you can and can't do. So it behooves you to go to, DEP and find out what the regulations are. Osprey, they're not as protected, but there are certain things that you can and can't do. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that really kind of gets me is those people that come up to a pond and they throw out their stale bread or that type of stale bread out for the geese.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
enriched bread isn't any good for the geese either.
no, exactly.
Okay, I mean, or wildlife. I mean, for the other reason of you don't want them to get friendly with humans, but you also don't want them eating that. They're not used to that. That's not on their diet.
Right, right.
That's not supposed to. That's on their diet. And then you get the people. Oh, that's still that loaf of bread is going bad. Let's just throw it out for the birds. That's not that
Yeah,
usually doesn't work either.
yeah. My my wife feeds our local squirrels. She puts peanut butter on a little cracker. They'll eat the peanut butter and leave the cracker. uh, so that's hilarious. But yeah, and don't disregard the foliage too. You know,
Oh,
in some of these shadowy places, you're going to find some interesting mushrooms, and they're great photographic subjects. You know.
well, apart from that too, we're back continuing along with the wildlife. You've got different wildlife passing through those same areas, going from and depending on which season to or from, or on their way from one place to another. In some of the locations up through here, um, during the winter, there's several different kinds of ducks or waterfowl rather.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the early spring, summer they've gone, and summer someone else is taking their place in the summer, and then
Yep.
that group of wildfowl takes off, and you get another set coming back down from the north headed south.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the seasons change with the trees, but it also changes with the wildlife available in that area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
Which
go with that.
which reminds me, the shoreline around a pond is an awesome spot to explore. I love walking around the edge of a pond or a lake, um, and just looking for all the wildlife. There's obviously you got turtles, you got frogs. I found snakes. Obviously, dragonflies galore are available. Spiders. with their webs is always fun. So yeah, definitely. Oh, did we lose? We lost Brian. We all did we lose Brian?
Well, it looks like Bob came in and
Bob came
was
in,
all along.
and Bob's not in his chair. All right. There he is. Okay. Oh, he must be having problem. Oh no, there he is. Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions or comments on what's been discussed? Brian, you're the one that originally had the question, so I I think you got yourself
Yes, I got a handful of
more
answers. Yeah.
information than you bargained for.
Yeah. And and what you were saying about that guy that sets up, I read that article or read about that fellow that sets up the scenarios. And when Alan was talking about getting out to same places more than once, I was thinking, I really been thinking that my knees have been preventing me from that. And where I live, I have woods and trees about 15 feet away from me. I've thought about setting up some scenarios that might work a little better.
Oh yeah, all it takes is getting a little creative. All
Yeah.
right. I'm gonna refer back to a forum because I wish forums were as popular now as they were. They were great communities for photographers to share ideas. There was this one photographer who ended up, he was older, he became disabled and had to rely on a wheelchair. And it did not stop him. What he ended up doing is he basically converted his car into a little mobile photo studio. And what he did is he rigged up this little tripod type thing that clipped onto the window of his car.
Amazon.
He would roll it down to it was just a couple inches, and it clipped right there, and he was able to shoot right from his seat.
Yeah.
And
Amazon. It's available on Amazon.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Well, this is going back
I picked one up a couple of weeks ago
yeah,
to do
uh,
just that. I saw
yeah,
somebody else doing that. The pictures that you guys see that I'm taking, I'm leaning against my car in every single one of them.
yeah. There you go.
I don't
There you
go
go.
walking through the woods either because I don't want to get myself into any kind of trouble.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
well, medically speaking, type trouble. So everything that I'm taking, I go to spots where I don't have to walk very far, or I can take
yeah,
pictures from leaning up against my car. There are places around that you can do that with.
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
which reminds me, Brian, you're in my area. Do you know where the dog park is? Off of 110, by any chance? You're muted. You're muted, buddy.
Yeah, the
Okay.
one off of 108 there near the
What? Yeah,
school.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So if you take that little side road into the dog park sits right on that corner. You go into that little side road to get to the parking lot for the dog park. Okay.
Yeah.
If you go a little bit further down that side road, there's a reservoir there. Okay. And there's two little parking areas. One is just as you get to the reservoir. Uh, I posted pictures of it. There's a little red pump house, a little red brick
Yep.
pump house. You can probably fit 3, maybe 4 cars. All right. But if you go a little bit further over, there's a larger parking area, and you're actually pulling in underneath all the pine trees. And it's a fairly level area, and it's only maybe 20 feet to the edge of the reservoir. So you can park there, and it's fairly flat all the way around. There's a path that loops all the way around, very easy walking, and Christ, who knows what you'll be able to find, you know?
Right. Good idea. I like that.
Yeah. So, and then the other place I would suggest checking out is Kellogg's um, bird sanctuary in Derby. The building itself, I think it's by appointment only but I never go in there. But there's a little parking lot right next door. I usually park in there, and I'll walk across the street, and there's a loop that will take you around the pond into the woods and then back in around. It's not very long, but I usually don't even end up going into the woods because I can find so much just around the pond. And a few years back, they redid part of the trail that goes over the outfeed from the pond. They put a little wooden bridge, and it's really nice, you know. And you're gonna find all kinds of stuff there, you know. Go there on a hot summer day, you know, when all the insects are out and buzzing around, and you're gonna walk home loaded with images and ticks.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so that's the only, you know,
Added
bad side,
bonus.
because like I said, the grass, you know, because they don't mow it on a regular basis, you'll get grass up to here, you know. Well, maybe an exaggeration, but definitely up to your chest. And of course, it's going to hide all kinds of ticks, so you got to be careful. But yeah, I had a blast in there. So, all right. All right. How are we doing for time? 7:30. All right. What I wanted to do is I wanted to actually do something with with this. Oh, let me take that off. I wanted to do something with this setup. We did something not too far back with strobe lighting, and I figure I should probably do something with just regular non-strobe lighting, you know, continuous light. So if you're interested, we can do that. Let me get my tethered. Okay. All right. So, of course, I can't see what the heck I'm doing. There we go. There we go. Okay. All right. So I figure, you know, we'll do something uh, with continuous lighting. Now, I know most of you guys are not portrait photographers, but I figure one of the easiest ways to see it is, you know, having some kind of subject. And I have my little mannequin here in place, so I figure why not? We'll put my little mannequin to use. I'm gonna need a lens for my camera. Give me a second. I also am kind of, I just got, I refrained from tearing all this down because I just got a job come in that I got to reset for. So I figured before I reset, let me go ahead and do this for you guys, because once I set up for my product shots, I need all this cleared out of the way. So anyway, now even though I'm using some Godox lights here, some Godox continuous lights. They're bicolor lights, and I bought them for video and stuff like that. But you can use anything you want. Okay. I think a while back I had also brought these out. These are photo lights in a big old reflector. Okay. But back in the day, one of the other things that you can use that is relatively inexpensive are these things that you can get at Home Depot. This one doesn't have a bulb in it, but all it is just a regular utility light. Okay, comes with a cheap clamp. And what I did is I replaced the cheap clamp and I put one of these fancy lobster claw clamps that you get from eBay for like $9 for these things. Let's see. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I suggest whatever you do, you get some fairly neutral, cool lighting. If you can get the natural daylight balance bulbs for these, obviously that's great. Now these, because they only utilize one bulb, you want to get something that's going to be fairly bright. You have to be careful. These are rated for a certain amount, but the nice thing is about the LEDs tend to be brighter without generating as much heat. All right. But for this one, we're going to use these Godox lights. All right. And the one thing that you're going to find with any kind of continuous lighting, as opposed to flash, is that the power, the energy that comes out of the lights is going to be a lot less with continuous lights than with a flash. A flash, you're going to get more bang for your buck, to make a joke out of it. So anyway, what I want to kind of discuss here is kind of controlling zones. I know most of you who do natural light photography, you're pretty much just whatever's available, you're shooting outdoors, all right? But even with what you do outside, if you keep some of these principles, you can apply it to something that you use when you're photographing with the sun. You just realize that you're going to have a little bit more power with the sun than you do in an interior. But the nice thing is, you come inside, even if you just grab a table lamp, or take the shade off of a house lamp, and you can utilize that because it's basically about light control, and that's what I want to discuss now. I just have a very simple one of the reflectors, the 5-in-1 reflectors. I took the silver cover off, and I'm just using the diffusion panel as my background. Okay. And what we want to do, or what I want to do with you guys, is kind of deconstruct the process so you understand how I'm building this, so you get an understanding of some of the things that you need to consider when you're building your light. And one of the things that I always talk about when it comes to any kind of lighting situation, and it doesn't matter how many lights you're using, if you're using a single light source whether it's indoor or outdoor, whether you're using continuous light or you're using flash, it's all about lighting zones. Lighting zones. Now, uh, if you've studied anything by Ansel Adams or if you read anything about Ansel Adams, you might understand uh, when he discusses zones and placing the exposure into certain zones. It's not quite what I'm talking about here, although there's a little bit of an overlap. But what I'm talking about is pretty much controlling the amount of light in different parts of your image. Okay. So for the most basic situation, you're going to have, again, it doesn't matter if you got just one light or multiple lights. Okay. But more often than not, you will always have a subject. That's a given. And you're always going to have something behind the subject. And that's a given. All right. I can't think of any situation where you have a subject with no background. Okay. You're always going to have a background behind your subject. All right. There will be times where there may be something in front of the subject. Okay. But you will always have at least the subject in the background. Okay. Make sense? All right. So, right off the bat, without even knowing anything else, we know that we're going to have two zones. One zone for our subject and one zone for our background. All right. And what we want to do is we want to understand how we can manipulate the light on each one of these zones. Okay. Now, obviously, if we have a single light, see which one. Let's turn this light on here. Okay. If we have a single light, we have a single light source, but we're going to have that single light source hitting two zones. Okay. Single light source illuminating both the subject and the background. And we can control to a certain amount how this light hits the two zones. If we come in closer to our subject, we are making our subject brighter. If we turn the power up on our light, we are making the subject brighter. Inversely, if we turn the power down or we pull the light away, we are bringing the amount of light hitting our subject down. All right, so to a certain extent, we can utilize our light to control how we illuminate our main subject. Now, because it's spilling all over the place, it's also hitting our background. Okay, and that same movement coming in closer, bringing it back, all right, bring the amount of light up or dimming it down is going to have an effect on our background. And by default, you probably have already come to understand that typically, because our subject tends to be closer to our light than the light to our background, we'll get more illumination on the subject and a little less illumination on our background. Okay? So right off the bat, we understand that our main zone, all right, we'll call this zone 1 and we'll call this zone 2. Zone 1 will typically get more light and be a little bit brighter than zone 2. Okay, zone 2 will tends to be a little bit darker. Likewise, because we have the light off to one side, we may notice that the side of our background closest to the light is going to be a little bit brighter than the side away from it. Okay, which now brings us. Oh, I'm seeing spots now in front of my eyes. Which now brings us to uh, the problem, I guess you can say, of how do we know how much light we need to put on our subject in our background to get a proper exposure. Okay, so first we have to understand what is proper exposure. What do I mean by proper exposure? Now, if we rely just on the camera, all right, to give us proper exposure, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the correct exposure. All right, so how does the camera know what proper exposure is? Because what we're doing when we look through the viewfinder and we are looking to photograph our subject, we're going to take a meter reading, right? That meter is calibrated to something, right? And you guys probably by now should know, what is that calibrated to? Anybody want to give me the answer? What's that calibrated to? Anybody? 18% gray. Oh, we lost Bob. Okay. It's calibrated to 18% gray, or what's called middle gray. Now, middle gray, and I've talked to you guys about this in the past, especially when it comes to editing. Middle gray is that halfway point between light. Oh, hold on, Bob wants to get back in. Okay. All right. So middle gray is that halfway point between pure white and pure black, or what we would be considered, if white is 100% light and black is 0 light, middle gray is 50% light. Make sense? Okay. But 50% light is 18% reflective. All right, because what we're doing with the cameras, we are utilizing an incident meter. It's reading the reflected light off of a substrate. So what they do is they take middle gray, all right, they put some light on it, and in order for that to photograph as middle gray, it's going to reflect approximately 18% of that light back to the camera. And that's what the camera's calibrated to, okay? And if you notice, my mannequin is painted not quite middle gray, but very, very close enough for government work, all right? But we have to understand that not everybody is going to read as, 50% gray, okay? Me, I'm pasty white. I am definitely not 18% gray reflective. Okay. So we utilize that middle gray as kind of like our target. But the true test of what is the correct exposure for your image is understanding what the true tone color is that you're trying to capture. All right. So in this case, it happens to be, this kind of bluish gray. Okay. But if you're photographing an eagle, all right, what's the color of the eagle? It's that kind of like reddish brownish color, right? And the white of the head. Well, not quite 100% white. It's an off white, but what we would call white. All right. photographic white, not, digital pure white. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have between the amount of energy that's hitting our subject and the settings on the camera, that when we take the picture, what we are doing is we are capturing the proper exposure of our subject. Okay. Now, from there, we have to understand that our subject is not flat. It's not a two-dimensional object. Okay. We are photographing it with something that's going to take a three-dimensional object and compress it into two dimensions. Okay. Height and width. All right. And even our eyes, we think about, what we look at and we say, oh yeah, we look in we see things in three dimensions. Not really. What we do is we see the world in stereo. Okay. If we close one eye, everything is flat. It's just height and width. All right. We close our other eye, you know, the image has shifted, but it's still height and width. All right. But with our both eyes, we're looking at things in stereo. All right. And we kind of cheat and determine depth based on that stereoscopic view. Okay. But that's beside the point. All right. So what we want to do is we want to be able to give our flat subject that's being recorded by our camera a sense of dimension, a sense of there is a curvature, there's form, there's substance. Okay. And the way we inform our viewer about that form and function of our subject is by creating shadows and highlights. Okay. So if we analyze what we mean by shadows and highlights, all right, well, first of all, let's see if I can. Let me make this a little bit bigger for myself here so I can see what I'm doing. Nope, it's not going to work, is it? All right. Unfortunately, the video is it's making this, my background, like really, really bright. It really isn't. Okay. But we have our light source here, and we can see, let me bring it a little closer. There we go. Okay. All right. Oh. All right. We can see the true tone color of our subject. Okay. We see that she's gray. She's got black hair. She's wearing a white T-shirt with a red design on it. We see that she's wearing a collar that has it's kind of like this dark gray. It's got highlights. It's got shadows. All right. And on her face, we can see the highlights. Okay. And then we can see on this side that we have shadows. And it's the highlights and the shadows that inform us of that form. Okay. But if we think about it, what is it? What are these highlights specifically? We got highlights here. We got highlights on her cheek, on her forehead. Highlights, in essence, is the true tone color that is overexposed. Okay. Anything that's overexposed is brighter. Okay. And now if we realize that, we can deduce that, well, what is our shadow? Our shadow is our true tone that is underexposed. Okay. Not enough light is hitting the far side to give us our true tone color. All right, so highlight is an overexposure, shadow is an underexposure. Okay, and what we want to do as a photographer is we want to control not only the true tone color, but also the intensity of the shadows, or I'm sorry, the intensity of the highlights and the intensity of our shadows. Okay, and it can get tricky if we're utilizing only a single light. Okay, but it's not out of the realm of impossibility. All right. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and prep my camera. All right. We are utilizing this single bulb, and I'm going to, I got it at about 30% power, and I'm purposely not putting any kind of modifier. I want this to be a bare bulb. Okay. So let's just go over, and I'm out of sight. Sorry for that, guys. But until I find a better placement for that camera, that's it. Oh, you know what I should do for you? Let me share this so you're not viewing too small a frame. Okay. All right. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and let me position this against my background. And it's as if I am just going to take a, what you call it, a headshot. Okay. All right. I'm shooting tethered, so let me go switch this over to here. We'll put the studio there. And all right, so right now I have my ISO set to, oh, where's my, oh, there we go. Let's try this again. There we go. Shutter is set at 60th of a second. Okay. These are just arbitrary numbers. I just put the lens on. I have no clue what it's set to. Aperture is set to f4. ISO at 400. Okay. Now, I typically keep my camera set at ISO 400 even when I'm shooting flash, simply because, you know, I don't want to tax the flash. I don't want to tax the camera. The camera does very well in controlling noise at 400, so I don't have to worry about that. But I don't have to shoot at a high power with my flash set to 400. Okay. White balance is set to flash. I'll keep it there just because I don't want to mess around with it. All right. But those are my three settings that we're going to play around with. Okay. So right now, I really don't know if that's going to be a good enough setting, but I'm going to go ahead and take a shot and see what we get. Okay. And okay, actually that's not too bad. Okay. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. So we can take a look at this and we need to ask ourselves, all right, does this look like the subject we're photographing? All right. And right off the bat, I can say, well, she's a little underexposed, all right, because I'm looking at what you would consider the true tone value, all right. So these areas that are being illuminated but are not highlights. All right, so these are the highlights, or actually we'll call it HL. Okay, we can see highlights here. All right, and we can definitely see that the majority of her face is in shadow. Okay, so these are these areas right here, right here. That gives us an indication of the subject's true tone shadow. Okay, and they're a little under. Okay, now what we can do is, because I understand what it is we're looking at, okay, there we go. We can take a look at that and say, okay, is that, let's go into this, all right, is that middle gray? Okay, now as I hover, what I want you to do is I want you to take a look in this area here. Okay, when I'm hovering in this area, you're not going to see, excuse me, you're not going to see anything. But as soon as I hover over the image, you're going to see a bunch of numbers. You know, these are the RGB numbers. Okay, and what you have to understand is that we have 0 on this end, okay, and we have 255 on this end, okay. 0 is pure black and 255 is pure white. So this middle area is what? 128, right? All right, this is all taken from Photoshop and Lightroom, okay? This should be pretty straightforward, all right? And you can see that we're pretty damn close, okay, with our subject, all right? But we have to understand, okay, is this triangle our subject? Okay, is that triangle our subject? All right, so one way we can determine this is we can go ahead and zoom back out. I'm going to crop very, very heavily, all right, to just that area, okay? And the reason I want to do this is, oops. The reason I want to do that is because that the histogram is just going to read that part, okay? All right, and that should be reading 50% gray or fairly close. So you can see that if my 50% gray spike should be here, all right, because it's shifted over, all right, what's that telling you? This is underexposed. This needs to move that way, all right? So keep in mind, I'm doing this without looking at the meter in the camera, all right? This is just analyzing the data, all right? So you can say, okay, I need to place the exposure from where it is to that 50%, all right? So if we drag our exposure, all right, until it's about center, all right, we see that maybe it's about a stop and a third, all right? So you can see right here, we got 1.3 plus 1.3. That's plus 1 stop and 1/3, because 0.33 is a third. That's going to give us that true tone value of what the mannequin is in that mid-range where she should be placed. Make sense? Okay. Hopefully it makes sense. All right, so let's reset this. Okay. And if we go back to the camera, all right, so now I can go back to the camera and I could say, actually, here, we'll do it this way. All right. We need to give it one stop. All right. So we can go from a 60th to a 30th of a second. That's going to give us a stop. All right. Plus a third. So we drop that down to a very slow 1/25th of a shutter. Okay. And we're going to press. And now we get an exposure that is a lot more close to what we need. All right. So let's put them side by side. Okay. The one on the left is the original exposure that I then manually changed the exposure I added. All right. And then the one on the right hand side, this is our new exposure. And you can see that the exposure of the subject is now dead on. But we got to ask ourselves, do we want to be working at 1/25th of a second? All right. 1/25th. Oh, let's see. Oop, wrong. There we go. Here we go. Do we want to be at that slow of a shutter? And hopefully you'll realize that no, that's awfully slow to be working on, especially, if you're working with live person, that's going to be moving. If you're doing still life, that's not moving, you can get away with it. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to bring our exposure back up. Let's bring it back up to the 60th. All right. That's probably the slowest I would go to. All right, and just make sure that your subject doesn't make any fast movements. And we need to make up the exposure in some other way. Okay? So, let's go to here. All right? So, we have a couple of controls that are available to us with our light. Okay? The one thing I did, excuse me, the one thing I did before we did all this is I lowered the power setting. I am at 30%. Okay. And I'm also a bit of a distance. I'm about 4 feet away from the subject. So we know that the inverse square law, if we bring this half the distance, I'm going to gain how many stops? Anybody want to venture a guess? If I close the gap half the distance, how many stops do I gain? All right. The inverse square law. All right. The inverse square law says that you now I got to explain it. All right. When you half the distance, okay, you are going to double your energy, but the doubling is squared. All right. So it doubles lengthwise and it doubles widthwise. Okay. So if you double it and double it again, you're doing what? Getting 2 stops. Okay. So you double, you bring it in, you're gaining 1 stop widthwise and 1 stop height-wise. All right. So squared. All right. So right there gives us 2 stops of light. Okay. And remember, what we determined earlier is we only needed 1 1/3 stop. Okay. So we're back to a 60th of a second. All right. There we go. Oh, let's move this up here so you can see it. We're back to a 60th of a second. Okay. At aperture f4 at ISO 400. That hasn't changed. The only thing that we changed was we went back to our original. So based on what you now understand, what kind of results should we see? Anybody want to venture a guess?
Overexposed
Awesome. And
By-
overexposure
by
by
2/3.
2/3. Exactly. All right. So let's take a photograph. We'll take a look at it. And, oh, maybe not. Okay. What happened? All right. Well, one, I don't know if I moved it exactly half. All right. And two, let's see. Oh,
You change the power setting?
nope, didn't change the power setting. We're not quite aimed directly at her. Okay. All right. Not quite aimed directly at her. All right. But there's also something else. Let's take another shot. Okay. There's also something else that comes into play. Oh, there we go. All right. That's a little better. Okay. There's also something that comes into play that a lot of people fail to realize is that when we move our light source in, okay, we are also increasing the contrast. All right. So if we look at, let's compare this to, well, we'll compare it to the corrected one. Okay. Notice how the shadows are much deeper in that second shot than our original one. All right. Actually, let's go. We'll do this one. Okay. All right. So this is the first shot we took, and this is the last one. Okay. So this one here is where we were about 4 feet away. And this one we are about 2 feet away. All right. The power setting hasn't changed. The power setting is still at 30% of our light. Okay. But you're going to notice how much different the light has affected not only our subject, but our background. Okay. Now, if let's just go back to this one here and let's reset this to our original. Okay. All right. Before we corrected it. All right. Now, what I want you to notice here are a couple of things. Okay. Remember what we discussed at the very beginning? We said that our subject is going to be zone 1, right? And our background is going to be zone 2. All right. So we have zone 1. Let's make sure I get, and then zone 2. Okay. If you notice the exposure of zone 2 in the first image and zone 2 of the second image, the exposures are very close to each other. Very close to each other. Okay. the exposure in zone 1 are radically different. All right. But they're radically different in very specific areas. Okay. And in particular, what I want you to notice is the actual true tone color of what our subject is and the highlights. Okay. You'll notice that when we brought the light in, we're definitely closer to our true tone color here, all right? And our highlight is brighter, okay? And that's because our original was underexposed, okay? Underexposed. But if we look at the shadows are almost identical, all right? So if we look at the shadow here and the shadow here, all right? The shadow and the background, they're almost identical in both images. All right? So this gives us a clue that we have a lot more control. Oh my goodness. Excuse me. My voice is going. My voice is going already, and I don't know why. I'm gonna. All right. Sorry. Our shadow and our background. Oh my gosh. Hold on 1 second. I gotta unclip my microphone so I don't drown you out. It's that time of year with allergies, let me tell you. God, I hate it. Sorry about that. All right. The shadow density and the background density pretty much remain the same. Okay. It's that true tone and the highlight that has shifted by bringing in the light closer to our subject. Okay. So now we can say, okay, I can control these two different zones separately. And even within zone 1, all right, zone 1 being our subject, I can control, here we go. Let's do, I can control the shadow, or I'm sorry, the true tone value and highlights, okay, separate from the shadow, okay, just by controlling the distance of our light, okay? Good. That gives us a little bit of something to experiment with, all right? So now we know we want to get the proper exposure for our subject's skin tone, okay? And we also want to make sure that we don't create too much of a highlight, all right? Now remember, the highlight is an overexposure, but let's switch this over. Okay. But we also have to take into account what is it that we are looking at here when we look at the highlight. When we look at a highlight, especially the more specular, all right, meaning the more shiny it looks, the more brighter it looks, the more specular, what we are actually seeing is a reflection of our main light source, all right? We only have one light. These overhead lights, they add to the overall exposure, but not quite as much as our main light, our key light, okay? So our key light is being reflected and creating these highlights, okay? But it's also illuminating and getting us our true tone value, all right? So we can control You know, maybe if we bring it down to, let's go to 20, all right, and take a shot. All right, switch this back over. All right. It's a little underexposed, okay? But the highlight is a little bit more controlled, okay? But that's not what we want, okay? Oh, switch that over, okay? We want to control the highlights to a certain extent, okay? But we definitely want to make sure that our exposure is what we are controlling, because the exposure, the proper exposure, is our ground zero. All right. So in your lens, when you meter, all right, that's going to be our ground zero. Okay. The overexposure, the underexposure, meaning the highlights and the shadows, is a derivative from that ground zero. So we want to maintain ground zero. All right. So let's bring this back up to that 30%. Okay. And we know that when we brought the light in, we created more contrast. All right. Because what's happening is that more light, there's more energy hitting our subject, creating more light that's being reflected back to the camera than when it was further away. Right? That means in order to compensate for that, we had to close up our aperture or speed up our shutter in order to cut out all that light that was coming in. All right. So that means what happens is everything on the shadow side is going to get darker. Makes sense, right? Because what we're doing is we are cutting out some of the light that is coming from our main light, and in the process we are cutting out the light from the shadow. All right. So we have to ask ourselves some creative questions here. How do we want to present our subject? All right. And this is now where we start breaking down how we want to control the light within our zone. And we haven't even talked about zone 2 yet. We mentioned it, that moving this in and out has an effect on our background because of distance. All right. When we move the light out to the 4-foot mark, we're further away from our background, which is going to make it go darker. Okay. We can also do the same thing by creating a little bit of distance between our subject and our background. Or if we want to make the background lighter, if we bring our subject closer to our background, we bring that light in. That light is also going to illuminate our background. Make sense? Okay. But what we want to do is we want to, geez, my voice. We want to concentrate on our main subject right now. All right. So we're going to bring the light in. All right. And what I want to do is I want to say, all right, when we have a bare bulb, which is what we have now, we have a very heavy contrast. Okay. What I want to do is I want to soften that contrast. So one of the ways that we can do that is we would need to soften our light. And the rule of thumb to a soft light is what? Bigger light source, right? Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to take a soft box and I'm going to place a soft box on our light. Let's see. There we go. Take a soft box. Okay. We're about 2 feet away. All right, which is okay. And we put a soft box on here. Oh, let's see. Yeah. We're kind of hiding her, aren't we? All right, let me see if we can. There we go. Everybody sees her a little bit better now. Okay. So we have a soft box. Okay. And let me just maneuver this a little bit. There we go. All right. And we're still at 30% power. We haven't changed that. But we're going to have an issue because we understand it now. We have a diffusion panel on the inside here. All right. And we have a diffusion panel on the outside. All right, let me put this back together here. Okay. So there's 2 diffusion panels that are working to create a softer light for us. Okay. But we're also making it bigger. All right. We went from a, I don't know, 3-inch light element to now a, what is it, 2 foot by 2 foot? Or is that 18 inches? No, 2 foot by 2 foot. All right. So we've significantly increased the size of our softbox. We have 2 diffusion panels. So we're losing a lot of energy. All right. How much energy? All right. Now I want you to realize so far I've done this without even looking through the camera to get a meter reading. All right. I've been making this adjustments by just looking at my results. Okay. So there's nothing, super technical going on here. All right, let's go ahead and take another shot. Switch this over. Okay. All right, and we can see, wow, look at how nice and soft that is. All right, but we're definitely a little bit underexposed. So what can we do? Well, we can bring it in a little bit closer, but what's going to happen? Oh, let me switch. What's going to happen if I bring this even closer is now our subject's going to get, feeling claustrophobic. Or if you're shooting, still life, you don't want lights getting in the way of everything. All right. So we're at 30%. So we have the ability to go up. All right. So if we go from 30 to 60, all right, that's basically doubling it, right? 30 to 55, 60. Okay. All right. I'm going to take another shot. Switch this over. That's looking pretty darn good. All right. And if we go ahead and go into our develop module, all right, we're not quite, all right, the shadow or the highlight edge transition is closer to our exposure. All right, so we need to go up. All right, so we're going to go from 60 to, let's try 80. 80, okay, and see what we get. I should probably put that one, there you go. Okay. All right. now if we compare that to, let's compare that to, bring this out of the way here. Okay. All right. So this is our current. All right. So this is with the softbox. All right. This is bare bulb. All right. At the proper exposure. Okay. All right. So at zero exposure value. And this is the bare bulb, our original, which was under by 1 1/3. Okay. All right. So if you notice, what I want you to notice is not necessarily with that first one. All right. So let's get rid of that. But I want you to notice the edge transitions. Okay. So we have, let's go here. All right. We have our highlight. Okay. Our highlights. We have our true tone color. All right. Plainly visible in the forehead. And then we have our shadow. Okay. And what I want you to notice is the transitions between those two. All right. So the transition between the true tone highlight, the true tone color and the highlight, and the transition between true tone color and shadow, and how soft they are here. But here, it's a lot more harsher. It's a lot more specular. All right. Look at the shadow here on the nose. All right. How sharp that is. Okay. All right. So just by adding a softbox, we have completely modified our the quality of the light on our subject. Okay. And you'll notice that the background is pretty much about the same. All right, because it's getting about the same amount of light. Okay. So if we want to change the background, now we need to take control of zone 2, and we got to say, okay, can I affect my background with this one light? All right. Well, we could. All right. I can take this light and I can now, position it so that it's hitting more of our background. Okay. All right. Let's do this. All right. All right, so we take that and compare it to the previous one. All right, yeah, a little brighter, not by much. It's not what I would call impressive, but it's a little bit brighter. Okay. But what we can also do is we can take a second light, which I just so happen to have right here. All right, yeah, I'm visible. Oh, yeah, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? That's hiding everything. Okay, I can take a second light and I can aim it at my background, turn that on. All right, I'm going to start off I'm picking a value, 50%. Okay, I have no idea. Okay. Now, again, I want you to remind you that at no time have I even looked at the meter on this. All right. This is all by feel. This is all by just reacting to what I see as the results that are coming off the camera. All right. Now, I'm doing that on purpose so that you understand that there's no magic formula that's happening here. There's no high-tech thinking. All right, it's just a matter of analyzing the image Let's take a picture of that. Okay. And we'll compare that one to that, and look at that. I'm picking up a little corner of my screen, but that can be easily changed. We can just shift this over a little bit. Okay. All right. And now what you'll notice is that we've manipulated the lighting in zone 2 just by adding a second light. Okay. And again, let me switch this over. Again, nothing crazy. Nothing crazy. All right. I picked an arbitrary number. Okay. And then all you got to do is just look at it and say, okay, is that what I want? All right. Now, a similar effect happens here that we encountered earlier when we shifted our light in. The perception of the shadows and highlights have shifted, because now when we're looking at, especially, if we look at the image on the right hand side, all right, it looks different than the one on the left hand side. Now I want you to understand the exposure on the main subject, zone 1, from the softbox is the same in both images. The only thing that I've changed is the amount of light hitting the background. All right. And that is looking a lot brighter. So by contrast, it's making the main subject appear a little bit darker. All right. It's a visual quirk. It's how our eyes interpret lights and shadow. All right. So this is why, going by the numbers isn't always going to be beneficial. You need to step in and say, okay, I need to step in as the artist and make my adjustments according to taste. All right. So what I would do is, in this case, because the exposure looks a little bit weird, all right, I want to change that up. All right. So now we can ask ourselves some questions. Okay. How do I want to modify this? All right. I could, let's see, I'm at, I believe 80%. Yep. I'm at 80%. So I have 20%. I have 20% more energy available to make my subject brighter. Okay. Or I can maybe possibly bring the light in a little bit closer, making my subject a little bit brighter. All right. Or I can ask myself, does the skin tone, the true tone value, and the highlight value, does that need to go up? Or can I get away with just brightening the shadows? Okay. Now, if you've paid attention to when you do your edits, especially in Lightroom with the sliders, okay, you may have noticed that one of the go-to sliders that you attack pretty much on a consistent basis, at least it is for me, is that shadows slider. I'm always opening up my shadows a little bit. Why? To kind of bring that heavy contrast down. All right. So that the images aren't as contrasty. It opens up the shadows. It just adds something to the image. So we can do something similar to that here, in studio without having to deal with moving any sliders. Okay. So we have 3 options. Okay. We can go up in a power. we can bring our light in, or we can open up our shadows. And how do we open up our shadows? Anybody want to venture a guess? Easy one. There's two ways we can do it, all right, really easily. Anybody want to venture a guess? No? One way, very simple, add another light. Add another light. But I don't have another light. I just got these two for now. So what can we do? Add a reflector. Add something that's going to take the energy that's being wasted from our key light and have it somehow bounce back. All right? So let's give that a try. So I have a what I've done here where I'm hidden. God, I gotta find a different angle for my light here. So basically, I have a piece of white foam board on a stand, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it opposite of my key light, and it's going to take some of that light and just bounce it back. Okay, so here is our the image without the reflector, and there's the image with the reflector. Okay, so you can see how much the shadows have opened up. All right, and now when we look at it, okay, it looks like a proper exposure. It doesn't look like it's slightly underexposed. Okay, where the one the image on the left kind of looks like it's maybe about a third stop underexposed. Okay. And then we look at the one on the right hand side that looks properly exposed, and all we did is we just opened up the shadows a little bit. That's all we've done. Okay. All right. Any questions on just that very basic lighting principle?
No. We did that at the camera club too with us that time. Yep.
So like I said, where are we? Let's go to there we go. Okay. It's not rocket science. I purposely kept it very, very simple. I purposely, did not mess around with any, metering. Okay. You guys are intelligent enough that you know how to meter properly. All right. And you can get your base exposure just by metering for your light. Once you have your base exposure, once you have that number, that control, all right, the rest is just about manipulating the lights, the power, the distance, okay, maybe something to kick some of that light back in, okay, and controlling the two different zones, the zone 1 being your subject and zone 2 being the background, okay. So now, how do we take that and apply it in a real world environment with just our sun? Okay. Well, we have to understand that we have a single light source, but we're still going to have two zones. All right. One zone for our subject, one zone for our background. You're always going to have that. Okay. Unfortunately, with the sun, because of the size and distance, obviously we cannot control the size or the distance or the power coming from the sun. All right. The only thing we can control is placement of our subject. If we take our subject and put it into a shady environment, that's going to give us a different exposure on our subject than what's behind it. Okay. So that's oftentimes why it used to be the rule of thumb when working with outdoor light is to put the sun behind the photographer. Remember those days? Okay. You put the light behind the photographer so that the light's hitting your subject, and then you just expose for the light hitting your subject. But what often happens is that you have a subject that's squinting because they got all this bright light in their face, right? So we change the angle of our subject, all right, in order to place that light either to the side of our subject or behind our subject, okay? So the nice thing about, hitting behind the subject is now it turns the sun into a beautiful edge light, hair light, rim light, whatever you want to call it. And then you expose for the ambient light in the shadow area. So now what happens is you have a properly exposed subject in the shadow area, and everything behind it, because it's in full blazing sun, is going to be overexposed. But who cares? It's about the subject. Okay? If you want a little bit more control, again, all you got to do is turn your subject slightly, put the sun to one side. All right? And now what we're doing is we are increasing the amount of light hitting our subject because we're now turning the subject towards the light. Okay. We allow for that added light, which is going to cause, by effect, that background light to darken. Okay. So we balance it out. Okay. So for Alan, you photograph, birds in flight. What is the key important thing? Is your background. Okay. Probably, in a wildlife situation, the background is more important than, say a portrait situation, because you have no control over your subject. It's not like you say, hey, Mr. Eagle, do me a favor, turn 45 degrees into the light. You can't do that. So what do you got to do? You have to put yourself in a situation that puts you in that relative angle to your subject. And you have to make sure that you have the appropriate background behind you. All right. So these are things that have to be taken into consideration when you're scoping out how you're going to photograph a subject. All right. So even though, you have limited control, all right, does not mean you have no control. Okay. The other thing is, you can pick the time of day. So you have a certain amount of control that way. And also you can pick to go out on certain days that have more favorable weather. All right. So cloudier days tend to be better than, bright sunny days. All right. You're going to get better light.
That too. I mean, there are certain locations that I will go to in the morning only, or certain locations I will stay out of early in the morning because it's shooting right into the sun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
Everything. So I go someplace else.
Yeah.
And go to in the afternoon or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not to say that, bright midday sun is a no-no. There are times where, you know, that harsh sun really makes a striking image. It depends on the location, depends on the subject, and it depends on how you control your environment. Okay. But yeah, so uh, as long as you understand that you will always have two zones, no matter what your situation is, all right, you will always have a minimum of two zones, your subject and its background. Okay. Now you can put them close together so that the light hitting the two zones is about even. All right. And at that point, you can say, well, you know, I've combined the two into a single zone. All right. But that's splitting hairs at this point. Okay. But you can have more than two zones by incorporating additional elements that you want to control the exposure on. Like, for example, if you have a foreground element, that now becomes a third zone. Okay. If you have a background behind your background, all right, so you have a distance seen, and then you have your immediate background, and then you have your subject, and then you have your foreground, then you have four zones. Okay. You don't always have control over all four zones in the natural lighting environment, but sometimes you can. You can take, if you have an assistant, you can have a flash that will now control your zone 2, or a scrim where you can block out a certain amount of light to control, maybe even control zone, your foreground zone. All right. Yeah, the flowers that are in the foreground that I'm kind of using as a framing device are a little bright. I'm going to hold up something to block the light on it in order to darken it up, so it doesn't compete with the brightness of my subject zone. Okay, so there are things that you can do. All right. Any questions on anything that we covered? I know it's kind of, hopefully not too basic for you guys. You know, and if at the most, maybe it became a little bit of a reminder of some things that maybe you've forgotten. Were you saying something there, Alan? Your microphone was off. No? All right.
No, I was just agreeing with you.
All right. I promised you that I would kick you in the butt and remind you that you need to get a book together.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the weekly reminder.
But you know what? It has to be a reminder for me too. I have to get off my butt and get my book together, because I have all those Ireland photos that have been sitting on my hard drive gathering dust. And I actually opened up that folder for the first time last week and was reminiscing, and it just reinforced that I got to get those in print. You know. But anyway, I don't know if you noticed on my Learn Photography with Duck Facebook page, I posted a video. If you haven't watched it, take a few minutes, watch it. It's only a short video, 15-20 minutes, whatever. But he actually talks about lo-fi printing, and I thought it was pretty cool what he did with lo-fi printing. Is basically he went to Kinko's and he just through the photocopier thing printed out on index card. And let me tell you, I was pretty friggin' impressed by how those images looked. Lo-fi, you can't get cheaper than that, and it was pretty cool. So if you get a chance, watch that video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Okay. Anyway, that's
Okay.
pretty much it for today.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully you got
Thanks,
something
Doc.
out of it. we'll see you next week. Any,
Okay.
so no last minute questions, right? Everybody good?
Let me go.
Yeah, we're all
Okay.
good.
All right,
Thank
guys,
you.
stay safe.
I will.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.